Quarter pole of the football season. John Clayton, Washington Post's NFL writer. He, of course, like all guests, appears via the Boardwalk Honda hotline as we take a look at some of the big storylines after 4 weeks of the quarter pole of the season. Look what has taken place so far with the Professor John Clayton right now on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Good to have you back, John. How you been?
I'm doing well. And by the way, I just want to thank everybody in the 76ers for hiring Doc Rivers, because even though I know he's lost 3-1 leads 3 different times in the playoffs, and I really respect him as a coach, a person, everything else. I'm glad he got the job quick, and now he's with Philadelphia. That's great.
Well, now he's Glenn Rivers. He's no longer Doc, he says.
Oh, really?
That's what he says. He wants to go by Glenn now. There's only one Doc with the Sixers, he said. So we'll have to refer to him as Glenn Rivers now. How about that?
Okay, well, I guess he's no longer in the medical business. Okay.
All right, 4 weeks into the season here, we got a lot of storylines, including what you say is possibly a historically bad NFC East. We're an NFC East country. Obviously, the Eagles really have had their struggles, but they're in first place. So how do you make a handicap what we might see over the final 12 weeks of the season inside this division?
Well, it's pretty ugly because, I mean, here's a division right now. In non-division games, it's 2-11-1. Now, what's going to change is now you got division games coming up, and then we'll get to see if Dallas is that as bad as their defense is that much better than the other teams in the division. But I'm looking at the closing schedule for the teams, okay? Because of the division being so bad, Dallas's closing schedule is 372, which, based on this year's records, that's the easiest in the NFL. Washington is sitting there at 426. They just benched their quarterback, Dwayne Haskins. Then you've got the New York Giants, 0-4, 490, 15th, and then the Eagles. But basically what's going to come down to is that, I don't know how many more games out of the division this division is going to be able to win. I mean, it was the worst in recent years last year, and it's even worse this year. But let's say, for example, if Dallas can put enough together and or Philadelphia, one of the two, it's not going to be Washington, it's not going to be the Giants, then, you have to figure there's going to be 4-2, 5-1 records in division play. But the rest of, this could be a 7-win division right now. That's how bad things are.
Of the two teams that we think can be there in the end, Philadelphia and Dallas. Dallas's defense seems to be historically bad. Philadelphia has injury issues. Which of those two do you trust more?
Based on what I've seen, none of them. I think I'd probably
Who could get to 7? Who could get to 7 wins?
I'd probably trust the Eagles a little bit more. But here's my concern. They've got nothing left on offense. The receiving core was bad last year, and this year it's totally stripped down because of injuries. Then you put 5 offensive linemen on injured reserve, 5 at least guys who can start on IR. That leaves Carson Wentz just getting pounded. Dallas Goedert is out. I still believe that Carson can get out of this funk that he's in right now, but until he gets some players back, that may not happen. And then you look at Dallas. They are an absolute mess on defense. They made the mistake. Mike Nolan is doing this on the defensive coordinator side of it and trying to put too much in, and so the players have communication problems. They're in a hybrid situation where they're trying to switch to a hybrid 4-3-3-4. That doesn't fit DeMarcus Lawrence, and it doesn't fit Everson Griffin, who like to go on a three-point snap, and of course on a three-point stance, and they can't do it. So that's bad. And then here's Dak Prescott putting up incredible numbers. And he's getting, 31.5 points a game, but they're giving up like 37.5. It's ridiculous.
You mentioned Carson Wentz. What do you see as the problem right now? It's so weird because when you mention the weapons, he seems to struggle when he has healthier weapons, and then when it comes down to the practice squad guys, that's when he thrives. We saw it at the end of last year, and then we saw it in last game. It's like when he has these practice squad guys, that's when it seems like he plays better, which makes no sense at all.
It doesn't, but that's why I respect Carson Wentz because, I watched it 2 times, in the 2 games, the playoff game and certainly the game right around Thanksgiving against Seattle, and he did the best. Greg Ward all of a sudden became a main guy in that early Seattle game. And so I think what it comes down to is that, Deshaun Jackson has been hurt really since he's gotten back there. That has not helped out. And of course, Alshon Jeffrey is pretty close to being done too because he's been carrying over these injuries. And so that's what I like about Carson. But now you add the problem because say what you want. The Eagles for at least the last several years have had one of the better offensive lines in football. Well, it's not there right now. They've lost too many guys to injury, and I think what's happened is, one, he's getting a little bit of happy feet for Carson. And again, he plays with pain. We all know that. That's fine. But again, I think that he's anticipating too much. There's no personality on the so I think that's the surrounding cast. But I think he's becoming a victim of having the problems in the surrounding cast.
John Clayton, Washington Post, his look at the quarter poll right now over at the Washington Post. And, of course, 4 games in, offense. It looks like offense is the name of the game this year. Who's got the most of it?
Oh, boy, I mean, you can go to everybody. I mean, it's in, and this is where the Eagles and all the teams in the NFC East are really going to struggle, because there's 12 quarterbacks in the NFC making $21 million a year or more, and 11 have been to the Pro Bowl. And the ones that now you can say Nick Foles, who's starting in Chicago, and Jimmy Garoppolo, they haven't been to the Pro Bowl, but they've been to the Super Bowl. So now each week you face somebody in an offensive year where they're not calling holding penalties. Quarterbacks, there's more in motion pre-snap than any other, or about 20% pre-motion snap. And because of that, it just keeps everything open. And so every team is going to be lucky, because I know I counted it up last weekend. It was over 27 points a game that offenses are scoring in the NFC. Now, it's a little lighter in the AFC, but that's where it's coming down to, and I don't see it necessarily changing. Defenses are going to have a hard time catching up because there's more pre-snap motion, there's more mobile quarterbacks. In the NFC, there's more quarterbacks than there are in the AFC, and so because of that, this is going to be the highest scoring year in the history of the league. I mean, right now it's over 51 points a game for the two teams, and you got record numbers as far as, well, I counted up, it was 18 quarterbacks with quarterback ratings at least at a very high level, and so many quarterbacks completing 65-70% of their passes.
It has been an offensive, and a lot of it, the holding calls are down, right? I mean, that's been a big thing by the officials to not call holding on plays that are like, not part of the play.
4 weeks there, it's been 127 holding penalty calls and 104 marched off. And that does two things. One, it buys more time for the quarterback. Two, the quarterback doesn't have to face that bad situation of 1st and 15, 1st and 20, 2nd and 15, anything like that. They're not facing that. And so what that does, and I think if you look closely at each game, that allows a team to keep their rhythm going and build that rhythm up on offense. Now, I know that's not the case with the Eagles right now, but more of the quarterbacks that can do that can get into more of a rhythm because they're not facing those long down situations.
One of your takeaways is new coaches are struggling while others are joining the hot seat. Your thoughts on Bill O'Brien and the rest of the coachings around the league? Yeah,
I was surprised they did it, but now we understand why it had to happen. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that he had lost the locker room, because he gets off to the 0-4 start. They're not doing a good call on the offense. Deshaun Watson, even though they've got $44 million on a total average for 4 wide receivers and so many high-paid offensive guys. I mean, their offense is in such a funk that Deshaun Watson is off to his worst start. But then we find out today that, in the last week or so, he's got in arguments on the field with his coaches, with J.J. Watt. Big tirade after the game by J.J. Watt, who's so respected, probably as much as any player in the league. So when you have that happen, and my read on it, because Bill, as you know from Penn State and everything else, I know him real well, I like him real well, but he blows up at a moment's notice, and he's done it so many times. It was now too many, and so because of that, I don't necessarily think Bob McNair's son was the one who ended up pushing this. I think it was Bob McNair's wife who says, okay, we're done with this. He's got to get out of here.
John, battle of attrition this year. Injuries. You mentioned in the article, the Eagles have had 5 offensive linemen on injury reserve. We know Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, but they're not the only team deal with injuries. It might be who can make it to the finish line the healthiest.
Oh, 100%, because we all knew coming in this was going to be a bad year for injuries, because you go back to 2011, that was the last time there was no off-season program, and that was because they had the lockout. And so there was a 44% increase in hamstring injuries, double them under Achilles injuries, and more than 50 ACL tears. And now we're seeing even more pec injuries because guys didn't probably train as well. And so now they're lifting and they're getting more pec injuries. So, no, this is going to be as bad as I've ever seen. I've been starting to chart this stuff on missed starts since 2015. 2015 was a bad year, but this is already significantly worse. What is it? In the first 4 weeks, it's like 589 missed starts or something in that neighborhood, and it keeps getting worse each week. At some point, it's going to level out, and that'll be because of bye weeks and guys coming back off the injured reserve list after 3 weeks as opposed to 8, or as opposed to the rest of the season. But in the end, this will be the most injured season you can ever have. And you looked at that game, and that was a classic one last week. Okay, you got the 49ers who lost their defensive line, their cornerbacks, and they were banged up. They had 7 guys on the injured list at wide receiver, and they ended up losing their quarterback and losing the game to an Eagle team that lost most of its starters on offense.
John, we always appreciate it, man. I want to get your thoughts on this. 4 weeks in, are the Chiefs still the best?
Yes, I think so. Now, you can make the argument that Seattle's played a little bit better, but then you have to argue back as like they're giving up almost 500 yards a game on defense. But that's the NFC. KC's at least in the AFC, so they're not getting as many tough quarterbacks to face, and their defense is holding up pretty well. I mean, they got the break that Cam Newton didn't play, and so Brian Hoyer was terrible, and Jarrett Stidham was terrible. But I think when you look at it at the end, Kansas City still has Patrick Mahomes, and he and Russell Wilson are the best two. They're the best two teams right now.
John Clayton, everybody, Washington Post, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. We always enjoy it, John. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.